Hi, guys. Well, thank you for showing up for our first live paint party online for the Roadhouse. And if you're a fan of supernatural conventions, you probably know about what our Roadhouse room is. We are a creative space at various fandom conventions, certainly Supernatural being one of them. And this this is kind of a an extension of that. If you've gone to supernatural conventions so far this year, we've been in Las Vegas. We just got back from Norfolk, Virginia, and now it there is a long break until June of supernatural conventions when the supernatural convention will return in Boston of this year. So, yes, Roadhouse will be there. It's going to be a good time getting creative with us. But we were thinking, what do we do in the meantime when when there's all these months with nothing going on? And we thought, well, why not go ahead and do some live paint parties? So our first idea coming off the Christmas holidays, Sherry had some of those funny little gnomes around the house. And I thought, as a joke, wouldn't it be funny if we went ahead and made a supernatural themed gnome? And that actually came into fruition then with this little guy here, who we like to call Gnomestiel. And this will be a very basic it's on an 8 by 10. This canvas that you see in front of you is an 8 by 10 canvas. Nothing fancy about it. I'm using the same types of materials I would use in any paint party in the Roadhouse. I am using my primary colors, white and black. So I've got red, yellow, blue, white, black. And just because I don't particularly like to mix brown, although you certainly can, I have a brown color on in there. As far as my brushes, I have my good old standby 3/4 inch flat and my little teeny number 8 round brush. Not really small, but for me it's a small brush. I normally use the largest brushes I can. I have a red cup of rinse water, which, you know, my saying, don't drink from the red cups. Yeah, don't do that. It's out of the way. My drinking water is in a bottle off to the side. I've got some paper towels, I've got a Sharpie pen and such. And for those of you who were wanting to go ahead and follow along, you know me, I don't really like to draw. Drawing makes people anxious a lot of times. So I went ahead and made a tracer of this guy. And so if you were online, you would have seen something like that there. And that's what it is. That's this little guy turned into a tracer. So that's his little outline shape there. So once we've got that outline in place, we can then go ahead and draw the little guy out. If you can see, I've got a little ghost image on there. I actually did sketch on in there. I'm going to use a Sharpie pen so you can see what happens here and how I go step by step through going from a drawing into an actual, or from a tracer into an actual drawing. So there's our little silhouette of Gnomestiel. Of course, good old Gnomestiel is a takeoff of Castiel from season 4 when he showed up in Supernatural in the episode Lazarus Rising, and it's one of those really iconic scenes. So why not make it a gnome? So here we go. I'm going to set this little guy away so he's not a distraction to us. It's another thing I'm not big on having something that people want to feel like they need to copy. So here we go. Here's the little triangular shape of our little gnome's hat here. So what we want to do down here across this little line, and I'm using Sharpie pen so it'll show up better on camera. Here's the little bottom edge of his cap. And instantly he starts looking like a gnome there. You can see his little cap sitting there. And because I want it to look like it might have one of those little curved brims, I just make another little line across it like that. And there's his little hat. Now, you've seen these gnomes in stores and things of that nature with their little bushy beards peeking underneath hats. And a key thing, which why I think this is such a great painting for doing something simple and whimsical, is that you don't have to see his eyes. So there's no eyes. There's just a nose peeking out under there. So about in the center of that, I'm going to make a little egg shape there. And there we go. There is his nose. Although, if you look at him right now, he looks like some one-eyed Cyclops type monster with a hat at this point. But we will go ahead and change that in just a second here. So there we go. We've got the egg shape. We know where the hat is. Now we just have to kind of give him a beard. Well, the easiest place to start with a beard is to start with his little mustache. So let's go ahead and take a little line down from the nose and make a little mustache shape off here and kind of up that way. There's half of his mustache going to this side. And then we'll do the same thing around here. And there we go. Now you can see where his mustache shape is coming. And of course he needs his little beard coming down. I don't want his beard to be too big, so I'm just going to make a little kind of like a look of a little, almost a little heart shape there. There's a little heart without closing it out. There's the little heart shape coming on around here. And there we go. There is our gnome shape. So, as I was looking at this, I'm like, okay, I've got a gnome shape, I have wings, I have things of that nature. How else can I make him kind of look like Castiel? Well, Castiel's always got his trench coat, and he's got that little tie going on there. So I put a little diamond underneath that, underneath his beard, and a little elongated diamond underneath that, and there we go. There you can see where his tie is. And I wasn't going to get super fancy with this guy, so I needed to know where his shoes went. So I went ahead and just made a little hint of rounded stuff there to make his shoes. Maybe a little sole in there so I can see it. There we go. There's his little shoes. And the last thing is to get that trench coat look. So I want to be able to see that he's wearing a shirt underneath there. So there we go. There's where you can see the shirt coming down in there. And then a little shape. How did I do that? A little shape of the little trench coat lapels. So a little triangular shape coming down there. And there we go. And there's Castiel. I did take liberty. Castiel had no angel blade in that episode, but I'm like, okay, let's give him one in there. So I went ahead and added a little angel blade in his hand. And with that, there we go. There's our sketch. Our sketch is done. That's all there is to it. I'm going to make a little hint of where I know the ground is going to be for him there. And there we are. There's our sketch of Gnomestiel. So, yay. I shouldn't need to do any more sketching on this. No, I'll probably do some line work at the end. There we are. There you go. I'm going to move fairly quickly on this. If you're fast, you'll keep up with me. If you're not, you're going to be able to rewatch this, and we will post it to our YouTube channel, so you can run it, pause it, replay it, do whatever you like, and work your way on through it. So, but if you watch it with me live, maybe you'll get as far as you can with it here, and then, I don't know, if you're on the East Coast, this is a little bit late, so, but I'm on the West Coast. We're in Las Vegas, so it's 7 p.m. It's a good time for me to paint. So here we go. I'm gonna go ahead and fill all of his background in. I used a light blue for that. So my best tip for mixing your light colors or mixing any color is start with your lightest color and then add a little bit of whatever is darker. So in this case, since I want it to be a light blue, that blue on the on the plate is too dark for my liking. So I'm going to load white paint, a good amount of white paint on there. I'm just going to take a little tiny bit of paint on the corner of my brush. If you look at that, you'll see there's not a ton of blue paint. It's mostly white, little tiny bit of blue, and away I go. I'm going to fill in this background. And did I use too much blue? I don't think so. There we go. Just going to start brushing along here. I'm going to take advantage of the fact that I am right-handed and I brush this direction. If you remember that episode, the barn had kind of a weird shape. It went up and over and down. So I'm going to start off at least brushing my brush strokes in sort of a feel like that. Up, over, and down, although that will change in a minute just to give me that look. Going to reload a little bit white, a little bit of blue. When I get into these areas where I am tracing, I just lay my brush right up against the edge and brush outward from it. And then I'm just going to lightly brush things around here. Don't worry if a little bit of paint gets inside your white areas. Nothing in this is going to be tremendously white. So any little bit of paint will get covered up by something else. So I'm just going to keep working my way around here, grabbing that outside edge, watching the edge of my brush, and painting outward from it. There we go. Sky is about I'm thinking sky blue. The background wall is about a quarter of the way or a third of the way done. If I need to, I can break a tiny brush out for this. I don't think I'll need to, but it's there. That is my hint to everybody. I do everything with a large brush. I paint a certified Bob Ross instructor, so I'm used to working with large brushes. And I'm a big fan of, when I paint, of using the largest brush you can get away with. Because if you use tiny brushes, you get right in there on everything that you're doing, and you start really picking away at little things. And I would much rather be more free with my brush, just fill in little areas, always watching the edge of my brush. Make sure that the edge lines up where I need it to be. That was a hair too dark for my liking, but I can fix that a little bit later. And then up we go. We paint around here. We paint up here. We finish this little area around in here by his head. There we go. And I got that one little area there. I think I have pretty much colored in everything that I would like in blue. Notice I'm being very loose with this. Not really paying attention to a particular shape or anything. What I am going to do right now, just so I don't have to come back to it, I'm going to make a little straight line here, a line down, straight line down. I'm going to do it a couple times. Straight line down, straight line down, straight line down, and straight line down, and that will kind of give us the impression of the odd-shaped ceiling line that was in that barn. So there we go. We have now colored in the outside area, or colored in the background wall. Except for cleaning up this roof, I'm going to leave that alone. I'm not going to do anything more with it. It's not all one tone. It's not colored in like a coloring book. What I am doing over here off camera is I'm just rinsing off my brush. I'm moving it around in that rinse water. Going to take a paper towel to it, give it a quick little blot, and there we go. My brush is ready to go for its next round. So there we are. There's our background. We didn't have to make it difficult on ourselves. So what shall we work on next? I say let's start at the upper part and work our way down. I think that'll be fair. Let's go ahead and work into the world of tans and browns. Well, notice in my colors, I don't want that yellow to get into that red. Well, you'll notice I've kind of laid out my colors in a very specific way. It may look random. I don't have the primaries sitting next to each other. The brown is kind of sitting here off to the side. I've got my blue over here, and my yellow is completely opposite. That's because I'm doing nothing that has green in this painting, and I don't want any accidental green to get in there. So my yellow is sitting off here. Now, of course, orange tones will happen in this painting, so red and yellow can sit next to each other. Of course, the blue and the white were sitting next to each other because they were going to mix. So, yeah, there was some sort of a plan. It's not completely random. Now, here we go. I want to get into this tan color. So basically, his little hat is going to basically match his trench coat. So I need a kind of a tan color, a brownish tan. Well, I have a dark brown here. That's not going to work for what I want. But if I take yellow paint, start with my yellow, fair amount of yellow, and then grab a little teeny weensy bit of brown on that. Oh, look what happens there. See that? How that nice little brown color is now happening? That little tan-ish color. There it is. I am happy with this. I like that color. That's going to work for me. I'll adjust it a little bit as I move along. For the most part, I mix very little. This is me personally. I mix very little stuff on the actual palette. I get the basic color there, and then I let my brush go ahead and do stuff on here. Now, of course, these little hats, they're a cone, and so they have a rounded look to them. So what I'm going to do with my brush is I'm going to make a little line up here just to start. Also lets me test my color. There we go. There's a little tracing on that side. I can see, does it look like a trench coat tan? And it does. I like it. It's going to work for me. So now that I've laid in that initial line, I can lay my brush flat against, or fairly flat against here. And I'm just going to bring in as if I were painting an ice cream cone. I'm just going to bring my color in from the side and roll it on in. So if you can see my brush strokes there, you'll see they are the brush strokes are actually kind of rolling their way in. They have a slight little arch. It's not as if I were scribbling color on there. I am laying in color in the direction that makes me think what the shape of this little hat is. There we go. Filled in that other side, and there we are. There's my first coat of tan on that, where I could make my decision. Do I want it a little more brown? Do I need it? I know I don't need a little bit lighter. I think a little bit darker would be nice, which is wonderful, because if I make it darker, I can do one more pass over here, just lightly move my brush across, a little bit more brown on there. What it does, I'm starting from the one side. Oh, my brush accidentally hit something. We'll fix that in a bit. There we go. And as I bring those colors in and round them out, there we go. Now you can see his little gnome hat actually does have a shape to it. And if I'm feeling particularly fancy, I can go almost into my pure brown now. And I'm not even cleaning my brush. I'm leaving my brush alone. And I can do one last little pass of a dark brown color. And that will do about the extent of the shading I want on this. I could go more. I could break a little bit of black paint in there if I like. Make it particularly dark. We'll see where we get on this if we do that at the end. But there we go. Maybe a few more little tiny shapes on in there just to rough it up a bit. And there we go. There's his little hat. It's got that little cone look on in there. Let me see. I am going to break out my tiny brush for just a moment here, because I know that I wanted this bottom area to be particularly darker, just so it separates a little bit. So I'm going to use some pure brown and just hit that area between the hat and the nose. What would be the little, I don't know if gnomes wear a little stocking cap type thing. I know it looks like a cone, but who knows? Maybe that's a brim. I don't know. In my world it is. That works. Okay, there's my pure brown. I'm just going to make a few little lines there. There we go. And there's his hat. He's good. I am done with that hat. I don't need my little, I might need my little yellow brush. I think I'm going to use my little brush. Hardly ever do it. This is a small area on an 8x10. So I'm going to go right back into that yellow and brown color. So yellow, a little bit of brown. I'm picking up what I was already using, so I know my mix has got to be fairly close. And here we go. We're going to give him his little trench coat look. I'm just going to go ahead and paint my way down here. There we go. There's the outside edge of his trench coat. And the other edge of his trench coat coming down through here. There we go. Bloop, bloop, bloop. And there we go. There's the other tan color. Of course, he has those little lapels going on. I'm going to use the same color on those. There we go. As I did my test paint on this, I'm like, that's all monochromatic brown at that point. I don't particularly want monochromatic brown. So I need to do a little something more to it to give it a little bit of shape. We all know the joke is, some of us joke that it's kind of a Columbo jacket there, that it's all kind of rumpled and such. We know it was a Constantine reference in the show, but or by Eric Kripke. And I'm just going to take some dark color here, and I'm just going to move inward a little bit. Not going to wipe out the entire thing, but see, I've got that little bit of brown coming on in there. Going to do the same on this side as well. There we go, a little dark color. Bring it on in, bring it on in, bring it on in. That gives us our dark color at the outside edge. And it moves its way in towards center. A few little lines there. Now we have that. You have the impression of a rumpled little trench coat. So there we are. Those were the hard parts of this painting, fitting those shapes in. It actually gets a bit easier from here. I'm going to rinse off my little brush again. I'm going to turn my attention to his nose. Now, in my original, I vacillated on, do I want his nose redder? Do I want his nose tanner? In my original, it's quite a bit redder than I might have done if I did it again. But it's because of the colors that I used. I was going into flesh tone, kind of into what was a flesh tone. It just turned out a little bit red. Generally, for a flesh tone, you're going to go ahead and make an orange of some sort of color. So there we go. I'm just mixing an orange. And then you tint it with a tiny little bit of brown, and you end up into the area where you want your flesh tone. And so there, we've done that. I picked up a little tiny remnant of my brown over there. I've mixed up this little color here. And here we go. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, see, that's more brown than red today. And I think I actually kind of like it. So he's going to be a little bit different today than he was originally. But I still kind of like the reddish look, so I'm going to break a little bit of red, more red into that color. And now that I've got that little egg shape, I'm going to work that red color around in a circle here, just to go ahead and shade that a little bit. There we go. So there's the outside edge of his nose. And then I'm going to wipe paint off of my brush so it's mostly clean. And then I'm just going to keep making these little circles come around. There we go. There's his little reddish nose. And let's see. Let's do one more tone in there just to make it look a little... I'm going to add a little bit of brown to that reddish color. I'm just going to do a little trace around those outside edges just to deepen it out there. And there we go. Now he's got his little reddish nose with the brownish hints around the outside edge. I've stayed away from my black just yet because my black will run away with your painting. So I haven't done it there. I certainly could, but I'm not going to. I'm going to wait to the end and see where I go ahead and shade things. So there we are. There's that. Now there's my little smudge up there. Maybe I should clean that smudge. I'm going to clean up that little smudge. I'm not worried about this little bit right here. It's that little bit there. So let's get back into my world of white and blue. There's white, little tiny bit of blue. And I'm just going to paint this area out there and blend that area back. There we go. That got rid of it. All right, so now, where to next? Well, he's got wings, he's got a beard, he's got his little necktie that we have to do stuff with. So, I'm going to try to make this as expeditious as I can. When I actually did the original painting, the original version of this, I actually didn't have, there is no black in that painting other than the Sharpie pen that did the lines on it. The black colors are a trick that I learned from a art instructor a long time ago, that he very seldom used black. He would mix blue and brown, and he would get a whole depth of varying colors there. So this is actually blue and brown out in here, any of these other colors. So give that a try. See how that works for you sometimes. Just play around with that. But if you wanted to, you could go the other direction. I mean, black certainly can help. It makes colors deepen out pretty rapidly. Let's see, I'm gonna get these shoes. You know what? Since I want to use blue, I'm going to start with blue. I'm just going to use the pure blue right on out of the tube, and I'm going to paint this little necktie. So now it lives here on my brush, and because I know I want to go ahead and tint this with brown, why not start with the blue already on my brush? And there we go. Now he's got his blue little necktie. Now here we go. Let's just see how blue and brown work together. If I load blue on this little brush, I'm just going to use a little brush right now because I want to work down into these shoes. If I use my blue and then I add some brown to it, you'll notice it's not a pure black, but it is very close to a black there. And I can go ahead now with that really deep color and hit those shoes. There we go. If it's not quite enough, I can very cautiously go into there and use some black paint if I really want to shade something out. But by not using black paint initially, you run less risk of missing your color depth. That's actually, that color is that's the blue-black. If you light hits it right, you can see that it is kind of blue. And then I just ran over the top of it with a tiny little bit of black. And there we are. There are his shoes. He is set there. I just see a spot that I missed right there by his little angel blade. Little teeny weensy angel blade. I left a space there. I'm going to fill that in just so it looks right to my eye. Right in here. That's actually wall showing behind him. There we go. There. No, it's not pure white. Okay. So there we are. We've moved quite a ways on this now. Where am I now? I'm 29 minutes on in. That's because I'm talking my way a lot through things. If I'm actually working on a painting that there's a little behind the scenes thing. If I'm working on a painting that I'm going to teach people, I generally shoot to, if without talking about it, if I can just have the idea in my head and then paint it, and it takes me about 30 minutes to paint it, I can then teach it in about an hour and a half. If it takes me longer than that, that's when I start editing and decide out what do I want to cut out of my idea, where can I speed things up, where can I simplify things. So there we go. Just a brief insight into my artist head as an instructor. All right, so let's go ahead and get these little wings in here. So again, we can use that blue brown mix. I'm going to use my large brush again, just because I like it. I won't fiddle around too much with it, and you certainly can use a small brush. If the large brush gives you anxiety, we don't want to have anxiety when painting, so if a large brush just makes you feel anxious, then go with a little brush. We want our painting to be fun. There's enough anxiousness out there to not have to do things with paint. So there we go. There's my brown blue color. And here was one of my edits on here. If I were painting this in more detail, like if somebody really wanted me to paint one of these for them, I would have actually painted these as feathered, like more angel wings. This is far more simplified. It's just striated a little bit on down there. Not so much feathered, but that was where I decided to cut a little bit of time out. So there we go. I'm going to bring my brush up here for that upper part of the wing. Bring it back down here. There's the little outer edge where I don't know if there's anybody who's I don't know, what would that be? Ornithologist who studies birds? Whatever that part of a wing would be, the part that the feathers attach to. That's what I was imagining there. And brought one up one way, up to the top. Brought it down this way, down to the here. And there we go. We know where we are going to go ahead and build upon our wings. That's the framework of them, and then it's coming down. So, yes, this is how, if in my world as a face painter and body artist, this would be the direction that I would go ahead and do dragon wings, typically. But that's okay. It works for this. I'm just going to take I'm going to make them look a little bit more feathered, and I'm just going to make little short strokes down here, working my way down, little dagger strokes there, and there we go. There's one wing. So if you look closely at that, you can't quite see it on camera, but there are little feathered bits in there. It's a little bit different than the way I did it in the prototype. And there we go. I'm just pushing the brush, push and release, push and release. Push and release, and down come the little shapes down there, down to make the feathered wings. And there we are. There we go. There are those little feathered wings. They are filled in. We are well on our way now. Now what I will want to do, I'm not saying I am going to do right now, I am going to highlight those a little bit, because right now they are a little bit flat. They're just very dark. So I do want them to have a little better shape. And I'm going to try something different. In the original of this, I brought them down with little liner brush strokes. I'm going to actually make them more feathered, and I'm going to use a different technique here. So, I'm going to need my little brush. I'll let it sit there for a moment. I'm going to come back to it, because right now that paint is wet. I want my highlight to not blend into it. So I'm going to let that paint set up just a little bit. So I'm going to shift my attention to the one glaring bit of white here at the moment, his beard. So I do want to tint that beard just a little bit. Now, we do want it to look fluffy and white, but we don't want it to look flat. So if I paint white paint onto a white surface, it's not going to help me much. So I do need to tint this color a little bit. Probably the initial thought is, oh, add a little tiny bit of black paint to it. Well, that'll make it gray. And I don't necessarily want that. So I'm going to look into my remnant areas of blue here so I don't get too much blue paint on there. I'm just going to try to pick up just a little smattering of blue paint. No, those have already dried, so I guess I am going to have to touch some paint there. There we go. A little bit of blue paint. Now it's showing up. There we go. So I've got some little bit of blue on this. All right. So now I have to think in terms of if I were a mustache, which way would my hair flow? Well, at least think of a big old like ZZ Top looking bit of hair there, and I'm just gonna kind of bloop, bloop, work my way on around, catch that line, and work some lines in that way. There we go. You can see that little difference in the shape. That may actually be a hair too dark, but it's now with if we look at that as an underpaint, I can then go after the fact and add white paint into that and bring it back to white, and that will just be that will work. If, quite honestly, I could have painted that all a light blue and then come back to it with just white and overpainted it, but there we go. Here, let's catch his little beard. So there we go, the little bits of color coming down to make that beard. There we go. There's his little beard. Now it's all kind of bluish at the moment, so I am going to go back into black. And I'm going to very carefully, I won't do a thing here because I know I've got blue in there. I want to take that on out. So I'm going to add another dimension to that. You can see I took a tiny little bit of black on my brush. So this is becoming a super light blue-gray right now. And there we go. We're going to work that color in. Yep, there's what I wanted. Ha! There we go. Little bits of that blue are still showing through. There we go. So now you can see with the little blue-gray color in, it's taking the blue away from this look. There we go. So it is. He's got kind of a blue-gray beard going on there, and now I think I'm just going to highlight it. I'm going to take some white paint. I'm going to be fairly strong with my white paint now and do one last run over it with white paint. There we go. Big shots of white. That will set back whatever was blue there. And there we go. He's good. Oh, as long as I got a little bit of white on here, why not hit a little highlight on the upper edge of that nose. There's a little highlight on his nose. There we are. Now, speaking of highlights, with that whitish blue gray color I was just doing, that would be perfect to work my way along these wings. So why not just take lightly work along here, catch the inside part of that upper edge of the wing, and do the same on this side. A little highlight there. There we go. Now his wings have his highlights. And now I'm just going to work my way down, just kind of, I'm going to make little feathery shapes. I'm making basically little footballs coming down there, little tiny footballs. If I were being really fancy on this, There we go. I would make them all overlapping and deciding where they would go on. I build one and another and another. But I'm not being that fancy today. There we go. And there's his wings. Yay, wings. A little dark in here. There we go. And there we go. There's his wings. Okay, we're good there. I'm going to put a highlight on his shoe. Here. There. There we go. A couple little highlights on the shoes. There's his wings. They've got a very impressionistic feathered look to them. Now, there we go. He's got his little hand over there. I should have grabbed that hand at the same time that he did his nose. So right now his hand is sticking there, and it needs some color. So let me see if I can kind of replicate that sort of orange color with a teeny bit of brown, and that's good. Oh, that'll work for me. There we go. There's his little hand. There we go. Now his hand isn't sitting there all by itself. Tone down that highlight on his nose. There we go. All right. There we are. Oh, the little angel blade. That angel blade. I don't have any silver paint on here. If I was feeling really, again, if I were feeling fancy, I would work into the world of silver. I'm not being fancy. So very, very light blue will definitely work. So there we go, just so it's not pure white. There we are. There's his little angel blade. Little teeny tiny thing. So if you wanted to say, well, Ed, that's not screen accurate. Castiel didn't have an angel blade in Lazarus Rising. Well, he also wasn't a gnome either. So there we go. We're already taking liberties. So there we are. All right. There's all the basics of him. That's it. He's all colored in now. This is where I would play around with other types of things, like maybe shading. I know I want to put ground down here, so that will get me into the darker brown world. So I'm going to take some yellow, a little bit of deep brown. I normally turn my canvas upside down when I am doing ground because my paint will get stuck in my tray here. And I'm just going to do some little horizontal brush strokes down here. Do want these brush strokes to be horizontal, so it looks like the ground is flat. I'll lay it up close to his little feet. And there we go. And go horizontally in each direction. There we are. If I want to go the extra mile on that, I can add a tiny little bit of black in there. And maybe make the area right below his feet a little darker. Of his feet when I'm painting inverted, but there we go. You get the idea. Now if I turn him over, there we are. He's got a little hint of shadow down underneath those feet. And there we are. Ground is done. And I'm just looking for areas that I want to deepen up. This is the one time I would start working my black on into here and think like, well, do I want this? So here's black with a little bit of brown, or actually brown with a little bit of black. There's a heavier line on into there that I can then just bring around and deepen out what I consider the shadow side of his little hat. Using the liner brush and coming back on in. So here's this little area on over here. Notice he doesn't have a hand over there. I put his hand, see, another little artist cheat. His hand is going around behind his back, so I extend this line on up here. And there we go. Add a few little dark bits here and there. And this is my shadow color today, which is brown with a tiny little bit of black. And now his little trench coat is all rumply, which is good. That's what we wanted. And there we go. Just working some color off my brush instead of cleaning it. There we go. There's his little wings. They are done. All right. Where are we now? I am now 45 minutes in. Let's see if I can get this done within an hour of tape time. Like I said, if you were, see, there's a few people watching live. I certainly appreciate that. And but if you're not able to keep up, like right after I get done with this, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick cleanup on the video, and I'm going to upload it to our YouTube channel, which is again on YouTube. Look for Roadhouse Activities, one word, and you'll be able to see the replay of this and be able to catch up on anything that you may have missed. So here we go. Let's go ahead and do these. Let's go ahead and do these upper sections. I did these little shapes here to sort of replicate the look of what was going on in that barn. Now I just have to make them look a little more correct. So small brush time. Small brush with some white paint. And here we go. I'm going to keep my shadow side on the underside, and I'm just going to, on the upper side of it, just make a little line. Just picture, if you will, an open beam ceiling. And now you can see the light part is where you see the front of the open beam. And the dark part is the impressionistic shadow underneath. Let's repeat a second time. Here's an open beam. I did a painting, a more realistic looking cat. I know I'm not a realism painter. I work a lot in silhouettes because there are people who do portraiture and things of that nature. I don't do that. I marvel at the people who can. I'm primarily a landscape painter, so I do things very loosely and such. But I did do a Castiel that was more detailed, and that roof, from experience, that roof with all the cross beams and things going into it was a pain to go ahead and paint. So it does have these little cross beams coming out from it, so I'm going to lay those in just loosely, just to give us the impression of where they were. That little roof, if we come on up here, we're going to make little lines coming sort of at an angle, like they're coming towards us. There we go. Hey, there's our cross beams coming out. And we're going to make a few. There we go. I'm not going to do a lesson in two-point perspective or anything of that nature, but there we go. We're just going to have them build their way out and say, here they are. Now they're coming towards us. Just very sketch-like. And there we go. In a way, when you're thinking of perspectives coming from the center of a thing, think of little sun rays coming on out. So I'm not going to talk about vanishing points and things, but if you start your vanishing point, you go out from there. But in a way, it's like beams of a sun. Sunbeams coming out and a little kid's drawing. And there we go. There's our background area. The roof is about done. The only other thing that I saw what was very iconic in that roof is that it's got those lights, those drop lights that come down from it. So I do need to put those on in. So I'm going to start about, where did I put them? They're going to be in the upper part. So I'm going to make a little circle. I'm going to make going to make a caricature version of those lights. They're going to be kind of large, a little big. So there we go. There's the two light, where the light itself, the light bulb is hanging down. Then I'm going to add some blue paint onto that. I'm going to make a little, think of these as, boom, here we go. There's the edge of the light fixture. I look at them as little half-closed eyeballs coming on in at that point. There they are. So there's the blue part. And then I'm going to lighten up my color one more tone with white paint. And I'm going to make it into that sort of... There we go. They really do look like eyeballs to me now. Sleepy eyes. If you're on the East Coast, maybe you do have sleepy eyes at this point. What time is it now? It's 7:51. That makes it what? Like, we're coming up on 3 hours? 11 o'clock on the East Coast. But there we go. There's the shape of the little light fixtures. Then I just need to, I'm going to turn it my direction because I need these lines to be straight. There we go. Just going to roll the little things up. Those I would clean up with a pen after the fact, but there are my little light fixtures. There we go. There we are. I'm going to take a Sharpie pen to those at the end, and you'll be able to see how those things play in there. So there we go. There's my little light fixtures. I guess if I really wanted to, I can... There's a dark line there. Another little dark line here, maybe a little over. There we go. Bloop, 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 bloop. There we go. There's the hint of those little light fixtures now. They're hanging up there. All right. And the last little bit of thing in this before I do my cleanup steps, and I'm going to play graphic artist and inker and do a little bit of Sharpie pen work, but I got to have things dry before I do that, is there were all those little sigils that were on the barn wall. And they had all sorts of shapes to them. So, yeah. I think the art department had a lot of fun doing that. If you really tear apart that scene and you look at it, you'll see some things that you truly recognize. I oftentimes bring up a picture, a still of that, so that I can actually look at some of the shapes. And so what I have on here, there are a few shapes that were actually, they're little cartoony variations of that. So like this little fishy shape, you'll see that up on there. There's a little thing that reminds me of a little pagoda there. There's a little square with a cross through it. This little thing that reminded me of the original demon trap, when I think the art department decided that they didn't want to do those all the time, and it looks almost like a variation on a Star of David, and then some other shapes. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just going to throw in some little shapes. So I've got blue and white on my brush. I just want it to be darker than whatever is going on here, and I'm just going to sketch in things. There we go. Not even thinking about it. There's a little square shape, and I knew that it looks kind of like there's a little crosshair across it. There we go. There's a sigil, quick and easy. Over on this side, there was a little fish shape. There we go. There he is. There's the little fish shape over there. Yeah, I'll hunt that one down. That one I thought, oh, that's interesting. And it actually had a little cross coming off of it. There we go. There he is. There's that one. I like that little pagoda shape, so a little bit more blue paint. My paint's a little light. It'll also catch this little area here. There we go. Oh, hair darker still. There we go. Little pagoda shape. Boop, 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 boop. we go. There's a hint of another sigil. Let's see. Let's just do a little thing here. I don't know. What was it? Little thing there. There were funny little things. Looking in there, looking at some of the signs from the screen capture. There was a little thing that looked like a little asterisk. So I put that on in too, just to give the impression that there are a bunch of little sigils. I guess if I were being funny, I would go ahead and maybe make up some of my own sigils, a little arrow shape. I know that existed. A little thing that looked kind of like a star was in there. There we go. There's a little tiny star. I got enough stuff so it gives the impression, again, as if I were doing a caricature of somebody in this, I would throw a few little sigil shapes in there. I know down in the lower area there was that really interesting looking Devil's Trap, which again reminded me of Star of David, so there, we'll just throw that in down there. There were all sorts of shapes. The more you look at that scene, the more you'll be like, oh God, I bet people have their initials in there too. There we go. So there's some shapes. Nothing. Don't think about it too much. Okay. And there we go. We are in pretty good shape. If I'm now, as I look at things, if I want to darken out my lines, I can go ahead and take a Sharpie pen here. Like if I want it to be a little stronger underneath his nose, that's one of the spots that I really want to show off as dark. So I'll just take a Sharpie pen and draw under there. If you are, if you're feeling good about using a brush, you certainly can. There's nothing wrong with, actually most of the time I do use a brush, but for purposes of this, I wanted to do it quickly. There, deepen out that area. Oh, these areas around the lights, I think these are dry now. So there we go. I can actually make trace around those little light globes underneath there. There we go. Now we can make them look more like light fixtures by drawing in their little lines or painting in those lines. I'm just doing a shortcut for purposes of this. There we go. Now we can see those little lights now. There they are. My paint was not completely dry. Sharpie got some paint on it and got clogged up. Wipe him off and look for areas where I might want anything darker. I think I want to strengthen this side of the gnome's hat. There we go. Strengthen that one side of the gnome hat. I think he's pretty much done. At that point, I would go ahead and sign this thing. And there we are. There he is. He is done. Gnomestiel is finished. I know for a fact we are going to go ahead and do some more of these gnomes just because I'm kind of in a mood to paint gnomes. So we are going to go ahead and continue this series and do some more characters. So I think there's definitely going to be a Sam. There's going to be a Sam and there's going to be a Dean. So at least you can do a team free will type thing. I don't know that I would do a Jack. I think whenever I picture Jack, I think of him with the Letterman type jacket with the dark glasses, that version. Doesn't work with this because he don't have eyes, but maybe he could. Who knows? Well, he didn't have eyes there either, did he? Ha! Okay, so there we are. Yeah, so there we go. Oh, I didn't realize I didn't see my chat going. Let's see. I'm near the end here. Oh, goodness. My touch screen is being silly on me. Oh, so what's my post? Looks like... Come on. Open up chat. There we go. Mandarin symbol for China. Oh, okay. All right. I don't know. Could be. Yeah, so there we are. I'm a little rusty on my Mandarin, so I am not sure. So there we are. All right, so there we go. So look forward to doing a few more gnomes. Sherry is going to start doing some online jewelry and paper crafting type things as well. So there's going to be lots of crafting videos going on over these next few months while if you can't come to the Roadhouse because there isn't a convention, we will come to you. So if you're feeling like being crafty, we are there for you. We'll keep making fun things like this, and yeah, away we go. So for those of you who are still working on this, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. You can certainly, it's going to be on Facebook. It will stay on there. I will then upload it onto YouTube. It's actually been streaming on Twitch while we've been doing this as well. So there's multiple places that you can watch it. And of course, if you missed it to begin with, when I'm going to actually put a link to the YouTube version of this as well. I'd also love to see how people's paintings went ahead and turned out. So if you'd like, once you get one of these done, feel free to post it in the comments because I would love to see them. So with that, hope you all have a good evening. Thank you to those of you who showed up. I certainly appreciate those of you who showed up and watched me live. I hope you go ahead. For those of you who didn't make it, it's out there. I want to go ahead and see a bunch of these paintings done. So good night from Sherry and I out here in Las Vegas. We will see you on the road.